Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you are in the world. Thanks for joining us for a Dexibit webinar. This is the first of our summer series, First Thursday webinars, and today we're talking about data stories and designing data stories. I'm here with Pierre, my name is Angie, and today we're looking forward to taking you through how to find an example of finding a data story in your data, some tips, top 7 tips on how to present data stories, and then we'll also have some time for Q&A at the end. If you're joining us live, welcome. If you're watching this as a playback later on, thank you for joining us, and we're looking forward to taking you through this today. And with that, I'm going to pass over to Pierre.
Awesome. Thank you, Angie. And yes, how to tell data stories. We're going to be using our product today, but bear in mind, these rules apply no matter what product you're using to report this data to your team or to your board. It's about creating a story that people want to listen to. And it's about being impactful. So I'll start showing my screen right now to show you what it looks like in our product and what our product look like. And then we can go and move forward. So there we go. This is what it would look like in Dexibit, and you can now see my screen. We'll give you a quick tour, but essentially what we have here is different modules that our clients are using depending on what they want to achieve and what they want to look at. So we usually spend a lot of time on our dashboards here, which is where we bring along different data sets to create stories, but we also have some insights here around capacity, pathway analytics, sentiment analytics, visitor origin, which is a very big and hot topic right now at Dexibit because we're launching a new way of looking where are your visitors coming from, and then some admin related modules where you can add users, change their level of usage and so on. But first things first, what we usually do when we use our platform is that we're going to set some dates and look at some dates. So these fixed dates are the whole time. Now, we've played a little bit of a scenario here because what's happening at the moment is that people are in the Northern Hemisphere in the bulk of summer, and they're busier than normal because we're on that post-pandemic effect, and we want to see how we're tracking. And what we do is that we essentially predict and analyze visitor behavior specifically for cultural and commercial visitor attractions. So we only work in this space. And if you own one of these, one of these entities, we want to speak to you. If you're not working with us yet, we specialize in that, right? So galleries, zoos, park, museums, that's what we do, and that's where we are experts in. When we go here, what we're going to keep in mind is that when we go to data, when we set up data stories, we usually don't start with an assumption. We're not trying to prove a point here. The fact is that I have a situation where I know at my venue we've been busier than last year, and I think we've been busier than the year before that, and we have goals set up, but I'm not reaching those goals. I'm just not capable of reaching those goals right now. I know summer has been busy, but for some reason, I'm not reaching those goals. And I want to understand why. I've made some changes in the venue. We've open extra days. We're opening longer hours. And I know we have more people, but we're still short on these goals. And I want to understand why. And if I have some findings, I want to essentially forward those findings to my team and possibly my board members on my board. So let's have a look at some goals, shall we? And the first thing that I do here is I'm going to load my what we call toolbox, and this is where we're going to have multiple choice of the data that we want to bring across. And funny enough, if I type goal here, I'm going to have a visualization, which is what we call them. Essentially, there's a graph coming through here that is going to look, that is really going to only isolate this goal. And I want to have a look at this monthly, because remember, I picked the 1st of June to the 30th of June. And I want to give it a nice little style that will actually show me what's happening. Okay, cool. So in June, we've been busy, but I've only met 86% of my goal. And that's pretty annoying. I know we've been busier than last year. So let's see how much busier we were compared to the year last year and the year before that. And the way I'll do that is I'll go back to my library here and I bring across what we call a visitation over time visualization. And I'm going to maximize this here because that's usually giving us a very good understanding of the sort of trend that we've been seeing year on year. And also it's a really good way to have a look at your trends overall and how you're tracking against winter versus summer, and essentially what sort of pattern you're seeing across the years. So I'm going to have a look at my 1st of January 2021 until the end of June this year. Let's have a look at that. And again, I'm going to give it a nice little style because you can see it's a little bit messy here. So let me see what's happening. And maybe instead of daily, daily granularity, I'm going to put that on monthly and see what's happening. And there you go. I can sort of see that, right? We're looking at 2021 here, and I can see we were doing pretty well. I'm looking at 2022 here, and it seems that we were doing even better than 2021. And we can see here in 2023, so far, we're actually doing better. So then my question is, there's more people coming through, and I can see that here. Did the changes that I've made by opening a day extra, so we were only open Monday to Saturday, and this year I decided to open on Sunday. Is this potentially cannibalizing my other days of the week? And I just have a feeling that we're busier, but opening on Sunday is actually not helping. And was opening my venue for a longer period of time also a good move? Am I actually making my staff busier and I'm stretching my budget, or is it actually helping me into spreading my day quite nicely? And the way I want to see that is I'm going to have a look at visitation again, but here I'm going to load some averages to understand what's been happening in 2021, 2022, and 2023 so far. And the way I do that is I'm looking at 3 years. So I'm going to load, 3 visualization across. And here I'm going to have a look at my 2021 dates. So I'm going to go here and I'm going to change these to 2021 summer. So my summer of 2021. Here I'm going to have a look at my summer 2022 and see how this is comparing.
And just while Pierre is loading up these dates, I can just provide a little bit of context. These dates are showing you date ranges in New Zealand format or British format. It's going to automatically pick up on wherever you are in the world. So if you're based in the States, you'll be seeing this date range in American format. So it'll be month, day, year rather than day, month, year. And this is just one of many localizations that we have in the products that's going to automatically pick up on your venue or your user's location and provide that slight adjustment to the localization. Really great if you've got lots of different locations in different countries around the world and you need to offer that to your users.
Absolutely. It's always a great confusion of mine around dates. I'm usually pretty bad with dates in general, but when we're talking different formats, another level of difficulty. So thank you for pointing that out, Angie. We will make sure that you are looking at dates in the right format, no matter where you are in the world. There we go. So I'm almost done here. So I'll explain my work here quickly. What I've done is that, there we go. There's my days here. So what I've done is that, and notice how I've done it, by the way, because this is usually how Angie and I always build a dashboard. And the way we do it is that we usually pull the same metrics on an horizontal view. So you can see here, we're looking at the same thing 3 times with 3 different time period, essentially. But we also always going left to right, because that's how people read, right? That's how you read a book. So it's just a natural way for you to look at these data from left to right. And here, what's happening is that I was opening the whole week in 2021. So there we go, Monday to Sunday. And I can see here I had a decent spread. In 2022, we're closed on Sunday. And we can see that it actually put a little bit more stress during these days of the week, right? During this day. So we had actually more people coming through, and I realized that, there was, during the days were actually busier. So in 2023, the change that I've made is I've now opened on Sunday, and my hint is, well, how well are we actually performing on Sunday? And from looking at these here, you can see that opening a 7th day essentially has not been cannibalizing my other days of the week. My other days of the week are fairly evenly spread, and my Saturday is busier than my Sunday. But overall, opening on a Sunday was a pretty good move. People are coming through on that Sunday, which is great. So I know that that was a decent move. Now, during the hours of the day, and this is where there's some very interesting findings. Sorry, let me move this across here to reflect some hours as well and close this part here. But what I've done over the years is I've played around my opening hours, and you can see here in 2021, I was opening at 11 a.m. and closing, by 3 p.m. And then here I've started to open earlier, and I wanted to understand the impact of that. And I remain closing my attraction at the same time. In 2023, what I've done is that I've opened even earlier than 2022, and I closed later than 2022. And here there is a little bit of an interesting finding, right? Is that I can see that my 9 a.m. and my 10 a.m. are actually very close. And then I start to have a peak from 11 to 12, and then back again at 2 p.m., which, by the way, if it's happening to you, is very common with all the attraction businesses that we work with. That 12 p.m. is usually a peak time, and at 2 p.m. as well. But my 4 p.m. here, I wonder if it's actually worth me opening an extra hour in the evening, because you can see that overall, it is sort of the time where the least amount of people, few amount of people are coming towards the end, because it's all about value for the time, of you that you're going to spend at this venue. So at 4 p.m. overall seems to be a little bit of a miss. So I may want to gather some more data around that and see if it's just purely for June or if it's, something that keeps happening. So overall, I know that the moves that I've made here to bring more people across are actually very good moves. There's nothing really extra that I can do. All other circumstances remaining equal, right? We're not talking about paid marketing. We're not talking about advertising. I'm purely looking at on an operational standpoint here. Me opening earlier than 9 or later than 4, it's probably not going to make any impact on my visitation. But overall, what we can see though is that we have been doing, really well this year and in June, and I'm still not getting my goal. So next, now that I know that my opening hours and my operational moves have been fairly successful, I actually want to deep dive and understand how much busier we were this year. Is it just a feeling? Is it just that, I feel like there is more people coming through, but no. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to load a visualization that's called a visitation summary. And then what I'll do is that I'm going to load it 3 times again, and I'm going to change the dates to isolate my month of summer for the past 3 years. And I'll do that right here quickly. So again, I'll change my dates here. I've loaded my 2021. I'm going to load my 2022 here. And this lets me delete my dates. There we go. And then I'm going to close this. Here is the interesting finding, is that in 2021, we can see visitations was down compared to last year. And 2021 and 2022 were fairly linear against each other. 2022 was slightly, a slight drop. But so far, when I'm looking at June 2023, right here on the right-hand side, those are reflected, those are the dates that we have here. I can see that I'm up 41% on last year. And this gives me a very, very powerful insight, right? Is that my goals are not achieved, but yet my growth rate is 41% per year. And now I know that my goals that were set were just a little bit too bold so far for this year, for the month of June. And I may want to, keep doing that exercise until the end of summer to see, the result and how close to my goal I'm getting. But so far in June, I know that those goals were a little bit bold. Now the question is, we can make sense of all of this because we've built that dashboard together. But how would you relay that information to someone else? And this is where Angie is going to help us to do so. If I created the dashboard by myself, and if I want to share my findings with someone else, how would I do so it makes sense to them? And I'm going to give it up to Angie, and she's going to show us how to do so.
Thanks, Pierre, and a great data story there about summer of 2023. And I want to show you a bad example of what not to do. And when you've been following along with Pierre creating that data story, it's familiar to us because we were part of the journey of creating it. But now that you're looking at my dashboard, I'm actually going to show you the same information, but you can see it's kind of hard to make sense of. There's a little bit of that sort of culture shock coming into this dashboard. The layout's not quite what you were looking at before. There's no sort of context to try and orient your brain. So it's a lot to sort of take in, and it's hard to really see that data story that Pierre has been talking us through, even though the information is actually exactly the same. So now, contrasting, I want to pop into another example. And this is one that has been prepared, ready for someone to read, because too often when we're creating data stories, we're thinking a lot on writing the story for ourselves rather than sort of how it will look to read to somebody else and allow their brains to very quickly join the dots and to pull that thread from the data story. And so I want to take you through 7 quick tips of how we kind of prepare something up once we've got a data story to begin with. And the first one that you might notice is my lovely emoji up here, and my sunny guy with his glasses on. And that is the title that you give a dashboard. Comparatively, you can see my ugly dashboard here. This is a lot to take in, and it's unnecessary to have a date range in the title, because when I land on the dashboard, I can clearly see that date range here, and on any visualization that differs. So I don't need to put the date range in the title. Instead, I can choose something that's going to immediately inform the reader what they're looking at. I've used an emoji because I find when you're looking at lots of different dashboards, particularly if they're shared with you, if you haven't been the author, those those little emojis actually help them pop out, and they help you arrive and quickly find what you're looking for. And two, the same as for your subtitle of your dashboard, this is an amazing opportunity to be able to just bring your reader into the context of the data story. It's very clear here, a look at how the 2023 high season is performing. That's what I'm interested in here. And if we continue that theme on of the importance of titles, you can see I've adjusted here each of the titles of my individual visualizations. Say, for example, if we look at these three graphs, it would be easy to just keep the existing visualization title out of the box of our pre-built visualization library. This would read something like visitation over time. So we'd see visitation over time, visitation over time, visitation over time, which is great. That's what we're looking at. But for my readers to really quickly orient themselves as to what they're looking at, it helps for me to just say, hey, look, this is a daily, weekly, and monthly view of exactly the same data that you're looking at. And my brain can kind of quickly go, I get that. Like, I can see the long-term trend going up here. I can see sort of some of the patterns that are happening each week, and I can see some of the sort of variation that I'm seeing day to day. That's really helpful. And if we keep going even further on this, on each one of these visualizations, you can actually edit the swivel text. So when you swivel around a visualization, it will give you a quick explainer. So to do that, I click on my edit item. Here's where I can edit my title if I want to change that. And if I click on the style tab in the studio and scroll all the way to the bottom, you can see here is where I can edit the visualization text, so the help text that is providing my readers with that context. So I might explain like where visitation comes from, perhaps, or what I want them to learn out of this graph, or something that I'm noticing that's interesting. So again, all of that starts to help the reader with that orientation. And the other really big one that I love is text. So if I come into the toolbox and go back into my library, if I search for a text box, I can then click to add one of those into my dashboard. And here you'll see one that I've prepared earlier, which contains a little bit of the narrative of the story that I want people to take away. Because for some people, looking at sort of visualizations that are illustrative is really helpful. For some people with a math brain, looking at charts is really helpful. But for a lot of people, reading text is a really useful explainer to help ease into looking at data. And so here I've got, I've put a date on this so that people know the point in time at which I'm writing this text, but I've got a little bit of a descriptor here just to really make my point about what my data story is about. And you can see here, I have pulled out the one thread that is our finding, which is that though falling below expectation, even though I'm not reaching my goals, my visitation is actually doing well compared to previous years, my peers, predictions, and past. And then you can see as we go on through this dashboard here, I'm looking at previous years, I'm looking at my peers, I'm looking at pre-COVID, I'm looking at my goals and then my forecast, and assessing all of those seasonal impacts and changes. So that thread just really helps the reader get the point that I'm trying to make, and then they can see how I'm evidencing that through data. So those notes are really useful, and you can actually put these at bookends of your dashboard, so one at the beginning, one at the end, or you can put them, Pierre talked about reading left to right, you can put actually every single row, you could put a notes at the beginning on the left hand side and then sort of follow with the data that relates to what's in there. So lots of different ways to use this on your dashboard. And speaking of, when it comes to sort of the structure of the dashboard as a whole, I always like to have my most contextual data at the top here. So for me, that's usually starting with a summary visualization for whatever metric it is that helps set the context. Here we're looking at visitation. It could equally be something like revenue or membership, etc. So I'm going to bring that in here. And then when it comes to the actual structure of the dashboard, I like to have what we call a form party. Pierre and I use these in different ways, but when you think about that grid of 3 across and then scrolling down, I might have, say, for example, if I was looking at different time periods like pre-COVID, last year, this year, I might sort of continue that theme in columns so that as my eye is sort of scanning through, I can sort of visually compare those date range. Or equally, I can look at different data sets and maybe map them across so that horizontally, I'm seeing sort of the same data played in different ways. So this is the idea of sort of keeping the form of your dashboard. And if you're planning on printing something out to a report, you can sort of consider the fact that you'll see 3 visualizations across and then 2 down on a single page when that gets printed out to a PDF or eventually in person. So think about that in terms of how your visualizations set in sets of 6, how they sort of will look on a printed page of the things that you want to show together as one. And speaking of reports, if you are planning on converting this to PDF, you will notice that it's quite hard. You can't look at a tooltip on a PDF. You're always limited in what information you're seeing. So we like to always turn on the labels of something just for the key metrics that you want to share. So to do that, I'm going to click to edit my visualization, go into the Style tab, and just toggle on my data labels here. And you can see now, I can see the summary of that as they come up there. And then my last tip is just pull out that one light bulb, that one thread that you want other people to read, and really make that obvious on your dashboard. Now, if I was presenting this to an executive, I might also have a slide that's going into my leadership presentation. Say, for example, if I was attending a meeting, and how you present that data on that slide, this is what I would suggest for that. You put the headline, the takeaway that you want people to have in the title. You put the details of how you arrived at that and some of the backing evidencing numbers in the description. And then you can have one visualization or maybe a couple side by side to evidence that point, but always putting that thread, that light bulb moment in the title, rather than if I were to comparatively say to you, something like that, I'm not quite getting that same impact. Like my brain has to say, you know, what are we trying to say here? Maybe I'm trying to do some bit of interpretation. I'm reading all through all this detail. I'm immediately lost when somebody's presenting it to me. But if we've got that nice call out in the title, it's just really easy for a reader to latch on to what you're trying to say. And if you've got a few of these slides in a row, each one of these points, if they're just reading the titles when they're flipping through that PowerPoint slide set, they'll be able to quickly see the story that you're pulling together amongst many data stories weaved together. So those are my 7 tips for packaging up data stories. Thank you very much, Pierre, for providing such a great setup for it today. And I think we might have time for a couple of questions.
Thank you, Angie. And I can see a few people typing here.
It's an interesting one here, Pierre. How do you find that thread? How do you find the data story to begin with?
How do we find the data story? I think you shouldn't go into this exercise thinking you're going to find a specific story. I think you should go in with you know, a very broad mindset, not with a point to prove, and then you know, be like, oh, you know, as I said, I just want to say that my goals are too bold and let me pull all of the data that's going to point in the direction, but more of why am I not reaching those goals, and don't go with an agenda essentially, because then you can make some very quick assumptions and you can interpret the data in one way or another. So go with an open mindset and sort of try to answer a question instead of proving a point. What do you think?
Yeah, it's such a good point. It's like you might be testing out a hypothesis, but you're certainly not manipulating the data to back up your point, come what may. I think for me, when you're looking at data, you're often finding out lots of different things, lots of different facts, and I'm always trying to look for what is the one biggest thing that's going to move the needle the most. So to give you an example, one of the sort of common data stories that we spend a lot of time looking at is retail performance. Like if we're on a busy day, how does that hamper or help our retail performance? And we might be looking at correlations between how busy a location is and how many people go into the store, how many of those make a transaction, what size that transaction is, what size the basket is. And there might be correlations between how busy the museum or location is and all of those factors. But what I'm looking for is the one biggest one that's going to move the needle the most, because we can probably only attack one of those problems at a time. And so it might be that if we're on really busy days, our store might not make as many transaction as a percentage of those shoppers. And that might be like the one biggest thing that we could change is add another point of sale terminal, add another staff member during those busy times, and we'll make X $100,000 more as a result. So it's sort of pulling on that biggest thread, and then you can kind of come in and tell the rest of the story, but find that one big takeaway, that one big fact that you want people to remember.
Cool, I like that.
Awesome. Anything else that we want to cover today, Pierre?
I don't think so. I think that's it's pretty good for our first Thursday of the month webinar. We'll see you next month with a new topic and also some new features in the product, which I'm really excited about.
Yeah, and we've got some really cool topics coming up this season. We'll be taking a look at visitor origin, voice of the visitor, and more on just creating great dashboards and reports and dealing with forecasts and things. So we look forward to catching you next time.
See you next time.